the Portola Expedition in Orange County. In 2019, California marked the 250th anniversary of the Portola Expedition, the first Spanish overland journey up the California coast. Unlike the British and later the Americans, Spain's strategy in the New World was not just about territorial control. Their mission was to convert native populations into Spanish-speaking, Catholic citizens who would contribute to the empire. At the heart of this plan were the missions, supported only by a small military force for protection. The expedition itself was split into two main divisions, 3 ships and 2 land parties making their way up through Baja California. They reunited in San Diego, though the journey had already taken its toll. 1 ship was lost, and many sailors were weakened by scurvy. Still, Captain Gaspar de Portolá, the expedition's commander, pressed forward. Only 2 weeks after arriving in San Diego, he gathered the healthiest men and continued north, leaving Father Junipero Serra behind to establish the first Alta California mission, Mission San Diego de Alcala, on July 16, 1769. Traveling with Portola were about 63 men in total. Soldiers from Mexico and Spain, muleteers, servants, and Indian neophytes from the Baja California missions. Their ultimate goal was the Bay of Monterey. Key figures of the Portola expedition: Captain Gaspar de Portolá, 1717 to 1786, a native of Catalonia. Portola led Spain's push into Alta California. His determination to plant settlements at San Diego and Monterey ensured the expedition's success. Although he briefly stayed in California, he returned to Mexico in 1770, leaving behind a legacy as the leader of this landmark journey. Father Juan Crespi, 1721 to 1782, serving as the official diarist of the expedition, Crespi carefully recorded the group's experiences. Alongside Father Francisco Gomez, he provided spiritual guidance as chaplain. He later spent most of his career at Mission Carmel. Lieutenant Pedro Fages, 1730 to 1796, commander of the Catalonian Volunteers, Fages took charge of the military after Portola's departure. He later became governor of California, 1782 to 1791, and granted the first rancho concessions in 1784, including Rancho Santa Gertrudis, which encompassed much of what is now western Orange County. Sergeant José Francisco Ortega, 1734 to 1798, chief scout of the expedition, Ortega played a vital role in charting the path north. He later helped establish Mission San Juan Capistrano in 1775, though its founding was temporarily disrupted by conflict. He retired to his ranch near Santa Barbara, and the Ortega Highway through the Santa Ana Mountains still bears his name. A note for Orange County history buffs: José Antonio Yorba, often linked with the expedition, did not actually arrive in California until 1771. Father Serra himself mentions Yorba in 1774 as one of 3 Catalonian volunteers who decided to settle permanently in the region. The Portola expedition's route through Orange County. From San Diego, the expedition moved slowly northward, often covering fewer than 4 miles a day. Scouts advanced ahead while the main group paused every few days to rest. Their path across modern-day Orange County in 1769 cannot be mapped with complete certainty. In some locations, the route is clear. In others, historians can only make educated guesses. What is better established, however, are the locations of several of their campsites. The Portola expedition in Orange County marked the first European presence in this region, laying the groundwork for the missions, ranchos, and communities that would follow. Though the journey was arduous and progress slow, it forever changed the history of California. Portola campsites in Orange County. The Portola expedition in Orange County left behind a series of campsites that provide a fascinating glimpse into the first European journey across this land. Each stop along their route tells a story of landscapes, native peoples, and moments that shaped California's history. July 23, 1769, San Juan Canyon. 9 days after leaving San Diego, the expedition reached San Juan Canyon, just northeast of today's San Juan Capistrano. They camped at the mouth of Gobernadora Canyon, where they discovered a flowing creek shaded by trees, grapevines, and wild roses. Father Juan Crespi named the spot El Arroyo de la Canada de Santa Maria Magdalena, suggesting that one day it might serve as the site for a mission. For many years, historians believed this mesa was the original location of Mission San Juan Capistrano, founded in 1776. But research by Orange County historian Don Meadows in the 1960s revealed the mission was actually founded 2 miles downstream and later moved to its current location in 1778. Today, the area is remembered in the name of Rancho Mission Viejo. July 24th to 25th, 1769, Arroyo Trabuco. From Gobernadora Canyon, the expedition pressed north into what is now Rancho Santa Margarita. They reached the Arroyo Trabuco, a well-flowing creek even in summer. Along its banks was an Indian village known as Aliuna. The men camped near a small rise called Lone Hill. Some climbed to the top, looking out toward San Clemente and Catalina Islands to orient themselves. The expedition rested here for an extra day while scouts explored northward. During their stay, a soldier lost his musket, in Spanish a trabuco. While Father Crespi named the site San Francisco Solano, the soldier's nickname stuck. The place has been called Trabuco ever since. July 26, 1769, Tomato Springs. Continuing northwest, the expedition entered the lower Santa Ana Valley. Expecting a dry camp, Father Francisco Gomez spotted a patch of greenery in the foothills. Investigating further, they found 2 small springs. Father Crespi called them San Pantaleon, while the soldiers referred to them as Aguage de Padre Gomez. A century later, American settlers gave them a new name, Tomato Springs. Today, the community of Portola Springs in Irvine honors this stop, with the expedition's campsite located near the modern Portola Springs Elementary School. July 27, 1769, Santiago Creek. The expedition continued along the foothills, passing between Red Hill and Lemon Heights before reaching Santiago Creek in what is now Orange. They camped on the creek's southern bank, close to today's Grijalva Park. Although summer had dried much of the water, the creek bed was lined with trees and vegetation. Father Crespi named the site Santiago, a name that remains tied to the area centuries later. July 28, 1769, Santa Ana River. The next day, the expedition marched across grassy plains to the Santa Ana River, near its turn at the mouth of Santa Ana Canyon. This was likely around the present-day Glassell Street crossing in Orange. Local native people welcomed the travelers, bringing food and shell beads to trade. In return, Captain Portola offered cloth and beads. To their surprise, the Spaniards noticed the villagers already had Spanish-style metal tools, likely acquired through trade networks stretching as far as Arizona. Suddenly, the ground shook violently. A powerful earthquake struck, followed by 2 aftershocks. Startled Spaniards and Indians alike felt the force of California's seismic nature. Father Crespi gave the place a long and reverent name, El Dulcísimo Nombre de Jesus del Rio de los Temblores, the sweetest name of Jesus of the River of the Earthquakes. The soldiers, however, kept it simple, calling the waterway the Rio de Santa Ana. Though Father Crespi imagined a mission here, it was not to be. Instead, Mission San Gabriel was founded further north in 1771. July 29, 1769, Brea Creek and beyond. After leaving the Santa Ana River, the Portola Expedition in Orange County pressed northward across open plains, climbing over the East Coyote Hills. They made camp along Brea Creek near a native village. The exact campsite is uncertain, but many historians believe it may have been near the present-day site of Arroyo Vista Elementary School in Brea. Water was scarce here, and Captain Portola ordered that only the men could drink from the creek, while the mules were left thirsty. It was a harsh reminder of the expedition's constant struggle with limited resources, crossing La Habra Valley and Puente Hills. The following day, the explorers marched through the La Habra Valley and crossed the Puente Hills by way of a small pass, today's Hacienda Road. At San Jose Creek, they were forced to build a crude bridge, puente in Spanish. This simple construction gave its name to both the Puente Hills and the valley below. Interestingly, much of the Portola route through Orange County never became part of the famed El Camino Real, the road that later linked California's missions. While El Camino Real tended to follow the valley floors, the expedition often stayed closer to the foothills. Still, several place names born from those early days remain part of Orange County's geography. Trabuco Creek, where a soldier lost his trabuco, musket. Santiago Creek, named by Father Crespi. Santa Ana River, named by the soldiers. La Habra, likely derived from the pass, Abra. The expedition used to exit Orange County. Puente Hills, named for the crude bridge the men built. Beyond Orange County, to Monterey and San Francisco Bay. After leaving Orange County, the expedition pushed on slowly north and west. Their goal was Monterey Bay, but in a remarkable twist of history, they failed to recognize it. Instead, they marched past and became the first Europeans to reach San Francisco Bay, entirely unknown to Spain at the time. By November, exhaustion, illness, and cold rains were heavily on the men. Supplies were scarce, and to survive, they slaughtered and ate their weakest mules along the way. Turning south, they moved at 2 and 3 times the speed of their slow northward journey. At last, on January 24, 1770, they returned to San Diego, having covered an astonishing 1,200 miles. Relations with native peoples. One of Captain Portolá's orders was to establish peaceful relations with the native peoples they encountered. His brief journal repeatedly notes visits from local Indians, who came offering food, gifts, and friendship. The Spaniards, in return, distributed beads and cloth brought along for this purpose. In Orange County, Father Crespi observed that some native villagers shouted when they first saw the Spaniards approach, but there was never hostility. Instead, the people came unarmed, made speeches, and offered gifts. The Spaniards, in turn, often chose to camp away from village water supplies, careful not to deplete scarce resources. These initial encounters were marked by mutual curiosity and respect. Sadly, history shows that such peaceful relations did not last. Once permanent missions and presidios were established, tensions grew and conflicts between soldiers and native peoples became common, to the deep frustration of the Franciscan Padres. Still, the Portola expedition in Orange County stands as a moment when first contact between cultures was largely peaceful. A brief glimpse of what might have been possible in California's colonial history. Tracing the trail of the Portola expedition in Orange County. For more than a century, historians have been fascinated by the exact route of the Portola expedition in Orange County. The first major effort came from Terry Stephenson, who began collecting material as early as 1917. Don Meadows carried the work forward in the 1920s, leaving us the most detailed account of the trail. Later, in the 1960s, Jim Sleeper studied the expedition in his role as historian for both the Irvine Company and the Rancho Mission Viejo Company. These early researchers had the advantage of exploring Orange County before urban development covered much of the landscape. However, they did not yet have access to all of the expedition diaries from 1769, crucial first-hand accounts that provide valuable details about the journey. As the 250th anniversary of the Portola expedition approached, my colleague Eric Plunkett and I decided to revisit the route with fresh eyes. We combined the original diaries of 1769 with modern tools such as Google Earth. Then came the most rewarding part, heading into the field ourselves, comparing the diaries to the physical terrain. Our findings differed only slightly from the routes suggested by Stephenson, Meadows, and Sleeper. But we never intended our work to be the final word. Instead, we see it as part of an ongoing conversation. We plotted our suggested route on topographical maps from the 1940s, when much of the original terrain was still visible. The trail line is intentionally wide. After all, the men and their pack animals did not march in single file. In 2 areas, we used dotted lines to show uncertainty between alternate routes. Even after the publication of our book on Portola in Orange County, we have continued to refine our research, especially concerning the expedition's crossing of the Puente Hills. An expanded, updated version of this work can be found on Eric's blog, Visions of California. Exploring beyond the trail. The expedition story is not just about the main line of march. Scouts were constantly moving ahead to find water, safe campsites, and passage through unfamiliar terrain. While camped along the Santa Ana River, some soldiers explored further up into Santa Ana Canyon. Others must have ventured into Trabuco Canyon. After all, it was here that a soldier lost his trabuco musket, giving the place its enduring name. On their return journey south in January 1770, the expedition avoided both the Puente and Coyote Hills, instead following the flats to the south. This route would have taken them across the land that later became Buena Park, Fullerton, and Anaheim. When they marched north again in April 1770, the expedition camped once more on the Santa Ana River. That night, a dramatic event unfolded. The mules and horses stampeded into the darkness, running at least 5 miles before they could be rounded up. A growing Spanish presence in Orange County. Step by step, the Spaniards came to know the land that would become Orange County. By the 1790s, their explorations had likely touched every part of the region except the highest mountain peaks. What began with the Portola Expedition in Orange County in 1769 laid the foundation for missions, ranchos, and eventually the modern communities that define the area today. Tracing the trail of the Portola Expedition in Orange County. For more than a century, historians have been fascinated by the exact route of the Portola Expedition in Orange County. The first major effort came from Terry Stephenson, who began collecting material as early as 1917. Don Meadows carried the work forward in the 1920s, leaving us the most detailed account of the trail. Later, in the 1960s, Jim Sleeper studied the expedition in his role as historian for both the Irvine Company and the Rancho Mission Viejo Company. These early researchers had the advantage of exploring Orange County before urban development covered much of the landscape. However, they did not yet have access to all of the expedition diaries from 1769, crucial first-hand accounts that provide valuable details about the journey. As the 250th anniversary of the Portola Expedition approached, my colleague Eric Plunkett and I decided to revisit the route with fresh eyes. We combined the original diaries of 1769 with modern tools such as Google Earth. Then came the most rewarding part, heading into the field ourselves, comparing the diaries to the physical terrain. Our findings differed only slightly from the routes suggested by Stephenson, Meadows, and Sleeper. But we never intended our work to be the final word. Instead, we see it as part of an ongoing conversation. We plotted our suggested route on topographical maps from the 1940s, when much of the original terrain was still visible. The trail line is intentionally wide. After all, the men and their pack animals did not march in single file. In 2 areas, we used dotted lines to show uncertainty between alternate routes. Even after the publication of our book on Portola in Orange County, we have continued to refine our research, especially concerning the expedition's crossing of the Puente Hills. An expanded, updated version of this work can be found on Eric's blog, Visions of California. Exploring beyond the trail. The expedition's story is not just about the main line of march. Scouts were constantly moving ahead to find water, safe campsites, and passage through unfamiliar terrain. While camped along the Santa Ana River, some soldiers explored further up into Santa Ana Canyon. Others must have ventured into Trabuco Canyon. After all, it was here that a soldier lost his Trabuco musket, giving the place its enduring name.